Hey there, decorating friends! It's Miss O Plays here, and this week I got a long-awaited tutorial. It's going to cover most of the merging techniques that I've been using in my builds lately. Now, all but one of these techniques will work on both ships and outposts. So whether you have your head in the stars or your feet on the ground, there should be something in this video for you. And admittedly, the merging techniques I found so far haven't been quite as forgiving as the ones we had in Fallout, but there's still a lot to go at here, and you'll definitely be able to make some new objects and build choices using some of these techniques on your ships or outposts. So let's get started. This first technique is one of the simplest, but also one of the most versatile, and it's going to be merging these cabinets that we can have in the build menu. These are unlocked from day one, so you don't have to rank up any outpost engineering for these. And we can merge them to make lots of different bars, counters, and architectural details for our ships and bases. Now, here we are inside of one of those ships, this time a Nova Galactic Hab, and we're going to go down to the cabinets and look for that stainless steel set to start with. These are the ones that are all silver on the front. They come in two sizes, a single wide and a double wide. And the beautifully magic thing about these is that after you've built your first cabinet, when you go in with your second one, if you slide it in just right from the side and slightly to the front, you can get them to occupy the same space at the same time. Which means that even though they come in two sizes, you basically got infinite sizes because you can make these fit any space at all. And the even better part is, just by picking up the very first cabinet that you put down, the whole thing will move as a single object, which makes for easy placement, especially in those tight corners, and in this case, ship habs. Now, one of the things I like to do quite a lot with these is make these mitered corners. It won't be 90 degrees, but it will be roughly the same angle as the walls we have in those hexagonal habs. And to start with one of these corners, I like to go with the small one first. I'm going to be using this smaller one to basically fill in the gap that's going to be left by the angle of these cabinets when they're all in together. Now, as you might be able to see, the sweet spot for getting this particular placement is very, very small. What you want to do is get that front edge pretty much centered on that small cabinet and then swing the back edge around till it meets. We can't get a perfectly flush surface in the back, unfortunately, but we can get pretty close. And even though it's not like a super crisp angle, it still looks pretty good. And this is one that I use fairly frequently. Sometimes you can pick this up as one object. Most of the time you can't though, so it's best to be deliberate when you're putting that first cabinet down. Now, if angles aren't quite your thing and you like your cabinets a little bit more curvy, then we're going to go to these small ones. I'm going to do something similar, just slightly angling each one as we slide them in. And these you can actually get pretty flush both sides. I'm not doing here, but for the sake of demonstration, it will work. And if you try to keep these angles as consistent as you can, once you've got them in position, you should find that the counter that is left behind is really smooth curve that will work really well with those really smart New Atlantis or modern home kind of designs. It also makes a really good captain station too inside your ships. Now, the big mergers like this only really work with these stainless steel cabinets. However, you can still get a little bit this magic with the blue and white ones too. Now, these come in three sizes. The smallest one is hit and miss whether it will work. Normally it doesn't, but the other two sizes are fairly reliable. Now, with these, we can't get a lot of same place, same time action. But these blue sides, when we're not on that part of the floor for some reason, will slide in pretty nicely. And one of the bonuses for this is it makes it look like a nice solid surface, so that'll make your custom cabinetry look pretty sleek. But it will also, once again, give us that all one piece magic when we grab the first one. Maybe not now, but yep, okay, those two are in, the first one wasn't in, right? But by doing this, we only need support for that first cabinet, and that means we can essentially float every single unit that we place after that first one. So if you wanted some wall cabinets that went across your wall, you can use this technique to achieve it, like I did here in the beginning stages of my Starborn ship. using those lovely blue cabinets to create this alcove, which would not have been possible if all of those units counted as a separate piece, but merged, it works. Now that technique was pretty straightforward. This next one is where things start to get a little bit weird. And this one is a similar idea, this time working with these square pedestals, which are unlocked with 1 rank into Outpost engineering, as well as the empty square concrete planters, which I believe you have from the start. For ships, you won't need any more than that, but if you want to do this at an outpost, you're also going to need a greenhouse. And I got a video on how you go about unlocking those, linked to in the description. But anyway, here we are. Here's our greenhouse. We got it placed on a fairly flattish piece of land, and this concrete pad is sticking up just above the surface. And that concrete pad placement is incredibly important because that is the tool we're going to use to make this merge. Now let's start off with the concrete planters, since everybody has those. And those are down here in the decorations. I'm going to go and place that on the concrete pad of this greenhouse. And what we want is just a little bit of the edge there hanging over the edge. So we got that looking pretty good. And if you got that placed just right, when you get your second planter, you should be able to automatically merge it in with the first one. Now, you can't go very far with that merge, it's just going to be the edges. But as you can see, they keep linking together again as one single item to create this rather cool wall. And this will only work, weirdly enough, in certain parts of the ship and on the concrete pad of one of these greenhouses. So the greenhouse or a ship is important. And if you don't want them to be straight, you can also make them curved. It's a little bit tricky, but you want to place them the same as you did before, and then just turn it as far as you can to get them to sort of sit in with each other. You can actually get it a little bit further than this, but you gotta really try. But as you can see, these are coming together to make a really nice curved wall, which you might remember having seen on my outpost in New Atlantis. And again, here we go. Nice, you can see actually it's a really nice curved wall, all in one piece. Now, sometimes the ground isn't as even and you won't be able to get this many pieces linked together, but if that happens, it's not a big deal, because what you can start doing is just building from the front end like we did in the beginning, and you're just going to keep taking it off the pad, putting the next one on the pad, and then merging them in together. And you can keep going with that until you run out of materials or run out of patience. You can even, as you can see there, adjust things in the middle as long as that first pillar is put in nicely. Now, obviously we can't build a greenhouse on a ship, but fortunately we don't need to, because we've got these curved little bulkhead wall pieces here. And if you can place your item to be merged just there so it's floating above the ground, you can get the same effect as we did with the greenhouse. Now, you're going to be a bit more cramped for space, but you can keep going. And again, this works with those planters as well as this particular set of pedestals. And they both work on the starborn ships by using these stairs as the prop instead of the walls. No matter where you're building, these pieces will still count as one object, and that small footprint means that we can just, as long as that one pedestal or planter is supported, the whole thing thinks it's supported. And this is absolutely perfect, because we can use these now to make our own archways, doorways, and bring a lot of different architectural options to our builds. We can even use it to make it look like we're building underneath or above water. Again, here we have a little bit of rug sticking out of that hab, which I placed the first planter on. And because that first one was supported, the rest could follow, and that was how I built this wall over the lake at New Atlantis to even delineate my territory even across the water. Carrying on with that theme a little, let's take a look at these planters. Now, these make great dividers, but again, they only come in a couple of sizes, but we can combine these into something longer and stronger using a tried and true method from Fallout, which is of course the rug trick. And rugs can be used to give a little bit of collision detection forgiveness for a lot of objects, but they work particularly well with these planters, especially the leafy bits where it's a little less dense. Sometimes the big succulent-y, cactusy bit can be hard to make work, but those less solid parts tend to want to go together pretty easily. So I'm going to put this on a rug, And then we're just going to pick up the rug to move it. And now we can slide this planter into another planter to make a longer planter. And this technique works with all of the planter options in the game. The only downside is if you delete those rugs, you're going to delete the planters with them. So choosing something small or easy to camouflage is the best way to make this look the best it can. Now perhaps you might not want to merge an object with another object. Maybe you just want to merge it with the landscape itself, like I did here, to sink these tables into the ground to create this custom decking. And the way we go about that is, well, it's rugs as well. Obviously, this is going to work best on a terrain with a little bit of a hill to it. And we're going to want to build on top of one of these habs because our terrain's not even, but we're going to want our build surface to be. So I'm going to start by using one of these hexagonal habs because they're pretty big. I'm going to lay out a line of these mats. I like the small ones because I can calibrate the length later, which you'll see why that's important in a little bit. And then I'm going to make at the very end of it the platform for my decking. And I'm going to try and keep this as even as possible because the more even it is on the mats, the more even it's going to be when I get my tables. These are a personal favorite of mine. I mean, I like the wood, looks like decking, right? So I'm gonna lay these out on top of there, and that is wonky. So let's get these positioned till we have them all lined up together in what looks like a decent piece of decking, which this now should. Now, once we've got all that built, what I'm gonna do is grab the first, or in this case, not quite the first rug, so we can use that to place our decking. And this works in two ways. One, we got that collision detection forgiveness, which means this will actually sink into the ground if we want it to. And secondly, it can make it so that the level we're placing it is lower down. And that is how we're going to get those table legs to sink into the ground, because the whole thing is, technically speaking, being built underneath the landscape. If, however, you don't want to build it into the landscape, you want to build it over the water, what we need to do is shrink down our amounts of rugs. And we want to try and get this to hang off the edge of this hab so we can pick it up from underneath in just a second. Then we're going to take another one of these little rugs and get this to sit as close to the surface of the water as we can. That is easier said than done in some locations. Here is pretty easy. And that is going to be the anchor for our into the sea decking. And if we grab that middle rug that we started building on originally, and we can place that over onto the rug by the shore, and that will allow us to sink everything that came before it into the ground to make it look like it's coming out of the earth and over to the water. And then everything in front of it will just float, much like the cabinets, etc. did earlier on. So that makes it jettison out over the water. And that is how I've been building my bridges and decking that goes out across the sea. Next up, let's take a look and see how we can get some objects behind glass, specifically those spacesuits, because I'm sure a lot of you have wanted to put those in the glass display cabinets as much as I did. And the way we're going to go about that is going to be by using the stairs on this airlock. So the airlock in place, I'm going to put one of these display cases there for a height reference. And then we're going to try and build this mannequin on the stairs of the airlock. And this should give us a few different heights to work with, but placement can be a little tricky because we don't have a lot of ground on those stairs to put the guy on. That's a little on the high side. Looks pretty good. So now we need to just back out of the build menu real quick and then go back in and delete the airlock. And that leaves our mannequin floating, and it would leave anything else on those stairs floating too. And now after that, we're going to grab that display case and then just move it over around the mannequin. Looks like they're a little bit higher than I would like, but not too bad for this video. Now once they're in the case, you can't dress them, so we're going to take that case back off the mannequin, put some clothing on them, dress them up like a real pirate, I think. And then when we've got them looking how we want, we're just going to go back into the build menu, grab that display case once again, and put it around the mannequin, this time for real. Now, this method only works outside, obviously doesn't work inside or on ship, so I'm still looking for an alternative way to do this, and if I figure it out, I'll let you guys know. And some of you might have seen this tutorial already at the end of my new Atlantis Outpost video, but I wanted to add it to this video to make it easier for people to find going forward. And this is how to place objects behind the glass doors on the front of those supply and wooden shelves. And for this, I'm going to build on something that Anne Christie 1956 posted over on Reddit. She came up with the genius idea of using the floating object technique that I showed a few weeks ago to stack shelves. And I figured if we can use it to stack an open shelf, chances are we can use it to stack these closed ones too, because when we see them at those points of interest, they're still functional. And the only difference really should be that they have these glass doors that we can't open, which means they should be hollow. And if they're hollow, we can fill them. And how we're going to do that is by lining up objects onto the wall shelves and then lining those up onto the back of one of these storage shelves to get them at the right height, so that when the objects are floating, we can just build those storage shelves around the objects. So to get started with that, I am going to put one of these wall shelves down here and start stocking it with items. Now, what we're looking at here as the front is going to be the back, so you need to arrange these in a kind of reverse order, because what we see as the front will not be the front in the final thing. And as you can see also, these small wall shelves are about the width of the storage shelves. So if you go a little over that floating space and you fill these up, it should give you the full width of those supply shelves. And then once you've got your first shelf stacked how you want it to, using these front-facing shelves as a guide, we're going to line up that wall shelf onto the back of these supply shelves. And by doing this, top to bottom, it should give us all of the items floating at exactly the height we need for them to sit on the shelves inside the glass door ones when we finally build them around. And then once we've got all of our shelves stacked and everything lined up exactly how we want it, we just have to take these supply shelves with the wall shelves on them, turn it back around and place it where we want our stacked shelves to sit. So we're going to position this one here, check to see if it looks like it's in the right spot, and then close up that build menu. And we're going to have to fast travel away because, as we know from my previous video, that's how we set the items. And then when we return, we can move these shelves out the way and see our items are floating. So now all we have to do is remove these shelves from the back of the storage shelves and then see if we can get them to place where we want them around the items we just floated, like so. And just like that, here those items are sitting inside those glass supply shelves, just like we've been dreaming of since the game launched. And it doesn't just work with the metal ones, it works with these wooden shelves too. And I hope that being able to fill these shelves brings you as much joy as it has done for me. So there you have it, a few different techniques you can use to get a little bit more variety out of the objects in that build menu, both at your outposts and on your ships. And as always, if you found anything in this video in any way helpful or entertaining, please drop me a like and subscribe, and I'll be back again next week with more building tips, ships, and outpost tours. Till then, bye!